Hey noble ones, what are you doing here? Me? Oh no, I was just reading the Picture of Dorian Gray, Oscar Wilde, and in the meantime, I was also checking out the Book of Five Rings by Miyamoto Musashi, and all this reading got me thinking, what sort of pasta should I make today? But who cares? Let's talk armors. You know how you all have your own favorite sort of armor, your favorite weapon, and I think that all of us also have our favorite suit of armor component. Haven't you? You have, right? Right? Well, I certainly have. My favorite component is the pauldrons. Now, the thing is though, that I don't think it's just me. I think there is a big, massive amount of people who like pauldrons. Why? Because if you think about it, I mean, imagine fantasy armor. Why am I talking about fantasy armor now? Because it is with fantasy armor that artists can fully, thoroughly express themselves, because fantasy armor doesn't need to be functional, right? Now, this doesn't mean to say that functional armor is not cool or is not artistic, absolutely, but it also has to you also have to make sure that it is functional. Obviously, functionality is a priority. With a fantasy suit of armor or with fantasy weapons, for example, you can transcend all these rules and just make something look as cool as it can be. If you think about it, however, helmets, yeah, they do tend to change quite a lot, but I'm never really much impressed by fantasy helmets, I have to say. Weapons, of course, swords, I have made a whole video about it. I'll just leave a link at the end of this video. Arm protections, leg protections, no. What really gets different is pauldrons. The question is, why? You see, I think it all has to do with a psychological factor. What are some reasons? Almonds. Do you want one? Now, let's imagine for a moment, let's go back hundreds of years, thousands of years maybe, and let's say that we are a small clan, okay? And we've got our swords, we've got our weapons, and we've got our warriors. Now, there are lots of different kinds of warriors, but let's consider 4 warriors for now. Warrior number 1 has got really big arms. Warrior number 2 has got a 6-pack. Warrior number 3 has got huge broad shoulders. And warrior number 4 is slim, fit, and has got strong legs. Now, without considering all our filters of understanding of biology, or for example the mechanical functioning of muscles, and even martial arts for a moment, let's consider instincts. When you see someone with big arms, the first thing that comes to your mind is, gosh, that guy is strong. When you see someone with 6 packs, probably you see him and you're like, hey, that guy is cool. When you see someone very fit and with strong legs, probably the first thought that comes to your mind is, this guy's got to be quick. But what about the guy with broad shoulders? Well, in my personal experience, whenever you see someone who's got really broad shoulders, the first thing you think is, gosh, that guy is huge. Shoulders tend to be rather imposing within the natural geometry of the body. And there is also some form of elegance together with it. When we go to an important meeting or we go to a job interview, we wear our suit. But if you think about how the jacket works, jackets normally have got bigger shoulders. Now, of course, in military history, even a strike directed to your face might be deflected or end up on your shoulders. So shoulders tend to be a very heavily reinforced area. If you look at lorica hamata, lorica segmentata, that is the strongest part of the armor as far as Roman armors are concerned. But even medieval armors, if you look at, for example, the Italian style, where you have the asymmetrical pauldrons, where, again, the way you fight with your left in a left stance, for example, then this pauldron will be bigger than the one on the right, because the one on the right needs to be smaller in order to allow you to be nimble with your weapon, whereas the second pauldron is your line of defense. It needs to be bigger to grant you protection. Look at American football players, for example. Look at how massive their shoulders are, and when you look at them, my goodness, they look imposing. Now, what do fantasy artists do? They do 2 things. If they want someone to look like a monster, like a very, very strong monster, creatures like orcs or ogres will have massive shoulders, natural shoulders. And sometimes even enlarging or developing your traps will make you look even more fearsome and scary, so to speak. Like this guy here. You look at him and you're like, gosh, he's a beast. But perhaps he hasn't got as big arms as the guy next to him, but he still does look more intimidating. The second situation, however, is knights. Knights are mounted nobility. Knights need to be elegant and strong at the same time, and certain types or certain form or artistic representations and shapes will give them that, and also an aura of majesty. What do they do normally in these movies and films? They raise the protection that you do have in certain 16th century forms of armor, where pauldrons have got sword breakers just coming up, raising up from the pauldron, but they increase that. That feature is augmented, and it will make it look more royal because it will look more like certain kinds of clothing worn by nobility. Add a mantle or a cape, and there you have it, a match made in heaven. Historically speaking, smiths have come up with loads of different ways to address protection for the shoulders. Let's look at, for example, the Romans. If you look at lorica hamata, the double layer of protection of mail, of rings. If you look at lorica segmentata, again, multi-layered protection, which I find to be particularly beautiful. Gothic armor, which again in the 16th century will reach very big and large dimensions. Northern Italian armor with asymmetrical pauldrons, as I have mentioned. Look at the Japanese sode, how they change. They will be the most different component between pre-1543 form of armor and a post-1543 form of armor. From massive square-like sode to smaller, more compact 16th century anti-aquabus sode. Each culture has got its own approach to the protection of their warriors. Personally, as I said, I like Northern Italian asymmetric style, but what would be your favorite historical kind of pauldrons? Also, a second question for you is, as far as aesthetics are concerned, do you prefer fantasy style pauldrons, or do you still prefer the functionality of real historical pauldrons? Please let me know in the comments below. I have to say that probably fantasy pauldrons are the only exception to the rule as far as I'm concerned, because I do tend to prefer fantasy pauldrons to historical ones. I still really like historical pauldrons, but when you look at certain beautiful forms of art, of these amazing artists that create these things, I am just amazed, and this is the kind of knight that I was brought up with role-playing games, and which actually then got me interested into the historical one. But differently from historical swords, which I actually prefer over fantasy swords, and the same could be said about helmets and other components of the armor, when I look at fantasy pauldrons, I just love them. Alright then, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please remember thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more content from the Metatron. I will see you tomorrow for my next upload. And remember, the Metatron has spread his wings. What time is it? 20 to 8. I gotta wash the dishes, mate. Tell you what, let's go wash the dishes together. Have you ever washed dishes with a content creator? You see, there is always a first time. The Metatron channel might not be the best one on YouTube, but I'm quite original, you gotta give me that. Yeah, let's go wash the dishes.